In the icy depths of Siberia, in an isolated village known locally as God's Finger, due to its peculiar rock formation resembling a giant hand pointing to the sky, resides Anya Volkov, a young woman of just 17 years with an unusual sensitivity to the suffering of others. From the tender age of 5, after a strange incident during a particularly severe blizzard where she got lost for hours and claimed to have heard icy whispers calling her name, Anya began to experience fleeting glimpses of past tragedies, echoes of pain and despair that hovered invisible to the other villagers. She never knew how to explain these moments, these shadows of past events that manifested as sudden chills or the sensation of a cold presence in empty rooms. The villagers, a superstitious and insular group, whispered about her, calling her the girl marked by the ice, avoiding her gaze and conversations in her presence. Anya lived with her grandmother, an elderly midwife with a wrinkled face and piercing gaze who seemed to carry the weight of countless silent stories within her. Her grandmother, Lyudmila, was the only one who didn't fear her, though she observed her with a quiet caution. Lyudmila recognized in Anya's fragmented accounts a distant echo of ancient beliefs and local legends about tormented spirits trapped between worlds, souls that found no rest due to violent deaths or unresolved injustices. The village itself had a dark history, marked by reports of inexplicable disappearances and family tragedies whispered in hushed tones on long winter nights. The rock formation that gave the village its name was for some a beacon of hope, for others a constant reminder of a greater, perhaps malevolent power that hovered over them. On a particularly stormy night, as snow lashed against the windows of the small cabin where they lived, Anya had a vision clearer and sharper than ever before. She saw the interior of one of the village's oldest houses, a dark, creaking wooden structure that had been uninhabited for decades, enveloped in an aura of palpable sadness. In her vision, the walls were stained with dried blood, and the spectral figure of a young woman with long, tangled black hair and a tattered white dress wandered through the rooms with a vacant, hopeless gaze. Anya felt a shiver run down her spine, a sensation of visceral terror mixed with a deep compassion for that lost soul. She knew, in some inexplicable way, that this woman needed help to find peace. Intrigued and disturbed by the intensity of the vision, Anya decided to investigate the abandoned house. Despite the superstitious warnings of the villagers and her grandmother's reluctance, who told her dark stories about the dangers of disturbing the dead, the young woman felt an irresistible calling. The next morning, taking advantage of a brief lull in the blizzard, Anya headed to the isolated house, the wind howling around her like a mournful dirge. The creaking door yielded easily to her touch, revealing a dark and dusty interior where the silence was almost palpable, broken only by the distant drip of melting ice. In the center of the main room, Anya found an old leather-bound diary. The yellowed, brittle pages contained the trembling handwriting of a young woman named Irina, who described in horrifying detail her life in the village, her love for a local logger named Dmitri, and the possessive jealousy of another suitor, a blacksmith with an unstable temper named Boris. The last entries in the diary were chaotic and desperate, mentioning threats, a heated argument, and finally, a terrifying silence. As she touched the pages, Anya felt an even more intense chill, and the image of the woman in the white dress from her vision became even clearer, as if Irina were trying to communicate directly with her. Anya then realized the terrible truth. Irina was not just a memory from the past, but a trapped spirit, a victim of brutal violence that echoed through time. Determined to help Irina's tormented spirit find peace, Anya began to spend more and more time in the abandoned house, reading and rereading the diary, trying to reconstruct the events that led to her death. She discovered that Irina and Dmitri planned to flee the village to escape Boris's wrath. but never had the chance. The last diary entry suggested a confrontation in the house itself, followed by a disturbing silence. Anya felt Irina's presence intensify each day, sometimes a cold whisper in her ear, other times the creak of a floorboard where no one stood. The young woman began to have vivid nightmares in which she relived Irina's last moments, seeing the terror in her eyes and feeling the agonizing pain of the fatal blow. As Anya delved deeper into the mystery, she began to notice other strange phenomena in the village. Residents reported feeling inexplicable chills in certain places, objects moving on their own, and indistinct whispers in the middle of the night. The oppressive atmosphere that always hung over God's finger seemed to intensify, as if the disturbance of Irina's past was awakening other dormant shadows. Grandmother Lyudmila, observing Anya's growing obsession, became even more concerned. She shared with her granddaughter ancient village stories, legends of vengeful spirits, and the importance of letting the dead rest in peace. Lyudmila feared that Anya was attracting dark forces she wouldn't be able to control. One night, as Anya slept, she had a particularly vivid and disturbing dream. She saw herself in Irina's body, running desperately through the dark, icy forest, being pursued by a shadowy, enraged figure brandishing a shining metallic object. The terror in the dream was so real that Anya woke up screaming, her body sweating and her heart pounding. She realized that the object in the dream resembled a blacksmith's hammer. The suspicion that Boris was Irina's killer grew even stronger. Decided to find concrete evidence to confirm her suspicions and free Irina's spirit, Anya began to search the abandoned house more diligently. In the dark, damp basement, hidden under loose floorboards, she found an old wooden chest. Inside, wrapped in a faded cloth, was a rusty blacksmith's hammer with dark stains resembling dried blood. Touching the object, Anya felt a wave of intense cold and a clear image invaded her mind. Boris, in a fit of rage, repeatedly striking Irina with the hammer. The horror of the vision made her stumble backward, almost vomiting. She finally had the proof she needed. Now, with the truth about Irina's death coming to light, the young woman's spirit began to manifest more intensely and terrifyingly. Objects were thrown around the house, piercing screams echoed in the void, and Anya's own presence was marked by a constant sense of oppression and fear. Irina wasn't just seeking peace. Rage and a desire for revenge also consumed her. Anya found herself in the midst of a dangerous spiritual conflict where she needed to find a way to free Irina without succumbing to her fury. If you're following this dark story so far, get ready, because the darkness only deepens. If you like to feel a chill down your spine and immerse yourself in narratives that explore the darkest corners of the human soul and the supernatural, then be sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the continuation of this terrifying saga. And have you ever had an inexplicable experience? Share in the comments. We want to know if you've ever felt the presence of something you couldn't see or hear, but knew was there. Your interaction is very important to us and to the community that seeks to unravel the mysteries that surround us. Anya knew that simply confronting Irina's vengeful spirit wouldn't be enough. The young woman needed to find a way to appease her anger and help her move on. Inspired by her grandmother's stories about ancient rituals and the importance of forgiveness to free trapped souls, Anya decided she needed to perform a special ceremony at the site of Irina's death. She shared her intention with Lyudmila, who, though still fearful, recognized her granddaughter's determination and agreed to help her. Lyudmila possessed ancient knowledge of herbs, symbols, and chants that could be used in the ritual. Together, grandmother and granddaughter prepared what was needed. They gathered rare herbs found in the icy mountains, wove a protective circle with coarse salt, and lit candles made of pure beeswax. On the chosen night, under the pale light of the full moon hovering over God's finger, Anya and Lyudmila returned to the abandoned house. The atmosphere was charged with palpable tension, and Irina's presence seemed stronger and more agitated than ever. Cold drafts swept through the rooms, and unintelligible whispers filled the air. Anya, holding Irina's diary in her trembling hands, began to read aloud the passages that described her dreams, her hopes, and her love for Dmitri. Her voice echoed in the silence of the house, laden with emotion and empathy. As she read, Anya felt Irina's presence draw near, a cold, intense energy that enveloped her. Suddenly, a strong wind swept through the room, extinguishing some of the candles and violently rustling the diary pages. A ghostly scream echoed in the air, filled with pain and fury. Lyudmila began to chant ancient songs in an ancestral language, her husky, firm voice filling the space with a protective energy. She scattered the herbs around the salt circle, creating a barrier of light against the spiritual darkness that was manifesting. Anya continued to read, her voice now stronger and more determined, speaking directly to Irina's spirit, acknowledging her pain, but also urging her to release her hatred and seek peace. She spoke of the importance of forgiveness, not for Boris, but for herself, so that her soul could finally rest. At the climax of the ritual, Anya raised the rusty hammer found in the basement. Touching it, she felt Irina's last burst of anger and terror, as if the object still carried the energy of her death. With an act of symbolic liberation, Anya placed the hammer in the center of the salt circle, visualizing all of Irina's pain and suffering being absorbed by the candlelight and the power of Lyudmila's chants. At the same instant, a moonbeam streamed into the room through a crack in the roof, illuminating the center of the circle. The sensation of intense cold gradually diminished, and the air seemed to become lighter. The ghostly scream ceased, replaced by a deep, almost comforting silence. Anya felt a soft, warm presence envelop her for a brief moment, like a final farewell. She knew intuitively that Irina had found peace and her soul had finally departed. The oppressive weight that hung over the abandoned house had dissipated, and a sense of tranquility filled the place. The ritual had worked. Although Irina's spirit seemed to have found rest, the experience left deep marks on Anya. Her sensitivity to the supernatural had intensified, and she could now perceive other presences in the village with greater clarity. These were fragments of past lives, echoes of silent tragedies that haunted the oldest corners of God's finger. Anya began to understand that the entire village carried a burden of unresolved suffering, a legacy of pains and losses that manifested in subtle and disturbing ways. She began to be sought out by some older residents who, having heard about what happened in the abandoned house, started sharing their own stories of inexplicable phenomena and dark premonitions. An old fisherman told of the ghostly lights he saw dancing over the lake on foggy nights, where many fishermen had lost their lives in sudden storms. An elderly woman reported hearing children crying in a house that had been the scene of a devastating fire decades ago. Each account was a new piece of the village's dark puzzle. Anya realized that her ability was not just a curse, but also a responsibility. She could be a bridge between the world of the living and the dead, helping trapped souls find peace and perhaps healing the invisible wounds that haunted the community. However, this new understanding also brought with it a growing fear. The more she connected with the spiritual world, the more she perceived the vastness and complexity of the energies residing there, some benevolent, others malevolent, and laden with dark intentions. In one of her explorations around the village, Anya came across a part of the forest that radiated a particularly dark and disturbing feeling. The trees were more twisted and dark, the air was colder, and an oppressive silence hung over the place. The villagers avoided this area, whispering legends about an ancient abandoned cemetery and evil spirits residing there. Intrigued and cautious, Anya ventured into the dense woods, following a barely visible trail that seemed to lead her to the heart of the darkness. After walking for a while, she reached a clearing where ruins of broken, moss-covered gravestones emerged from the ground. The place exuded an aura of deep sadness and abandonment. Anya felt countless presences around her, fragmented whispers and sensations of pain and anger. Suddenly, a spectral figure emerged from among the trees. A tall, thin man with a disfigured face and empty eyes that seemed to glare at her with hatred. He emanated a cold and menacing energy, unlike anything Anya had felt before. Before she could react, other shadowy figures began to emerge from the shadows, surrounding her with clearly hostile intentions. Anya realized she had disturbed something ancient and dangerous, something that sought not peace, but vengeance and suffering. Terrified, Anya tried to retreat, but the spectral figures surrounded her, their whispers growing louder and more menacing. She felt the icy touch of invisible hands trying to grab her, and a wave of dread paralyzed her for an instant. She remembered her grandmother's teachings about the importance of faith and inner strength to ward off darkness. Gathering all her courage, Anya closed her eyes and began to recite an ancient prayer Lyudmila had taught her. A prayer for protection and light. As Anya prayed, a faint light began to emanate from her body, partially dispelling the shadows around her. The spectral figures retreated slightly, as if the light burned them. Anya realized that her connection to the spiritual world could be a defensive weapon, as well as a helping tool. She continued to pray, her voice gaining strength and conviction, and the light around her intensified, forcing the shadowy entities to move even further away. However, the disfigured man remained, his empty gaze fixed on Anya with relentless hatred. He raised a spectral hand towards her, and Anya felt a searing pain in her mind, as if they were trying to invade her thoughts and her deepest fears. She realized that he was the source of the malevolent energy in that place, a powerful and tormented spirit that held the other souls captive under its dominion. Anya knew she couldn't simply run away. To protect herself and free the other spirits, she needed to confront this shadowy entity. Inspired by how she helped Irina, Anya tried to connect with the spirit's pain, seeking the origin of its anger and suffering. Through quick, painful glimpses that invaded her mind, she saw scenes of betrayal, injustice, and a brutal death that occurred in that cemetery many years ago. The man had been a community leader, falsely accused of a heinous crime and lynched by his own people. His anger and desire for revenge had become a dark force that corrupted the place. Understanding the source of his torment, Anya changed her approach. Instead of fighting him, she began to speak to the spirit with compassion, acknowledging his pain and the injustice he had suffered. She spoke of the importance of releasing hatred and seeking peace so that he could finally find rest and free the other souls trapped in his darkness. Her words, filled with sincerity and empathy, seemed to have an unexpected effect. The specter's empty gaze wavered, and the expression of hatred on his face began to dissipate, replaced by a profound sadness. Slowly, the malevolent energy that hung over the cemetery began to dissipate. The other shadowy figures became less threatening, their whispers now laden with a melancholic lament instead of anger. The disfigured man lowered his spectral hand, and Anya felt the pain in her mind diminish. For a brief instant, she saw in his eyes a flicker of recognition and gratitude before his figure began to slowly fade, along with the other presences. When the last specter disappeared, a deep, tranquil silence fell over the cemetery. The darkness in the forest seemed to dissipate, and sunlight began to filter through the trees. Anya felt extreme exhaustion, but also a profound sense of relief and accomplishment. She had faced the darkness and somehow had prevailed. Leaving the abandoned cemetery, Anya knew her journey was just beginning. She had discovered a purpose in her unusual ability to be a guide for lost souls and a protector against the dark forces that haunted the world, and the village of God's Finger, with its history rich in mysteries and tragedies, certainly held many other secrets waiting to be revealed. If you've made it to the end of this dark journey, we hope you've felt the intensity of the terror and the depth of the stories we've shared. If you felt chills, were intrigued, or even a little disturbed, then our goal has been achieved. Now, we want to invite you to become part of our community of supernatural explorers. Subscribe to the channel and activate notifications so you don't miss any of our next horrifying accounts. And you, what did you think of this new story? What moments scared you the most? Share your opinions and theories in the comments. We'd love to know what you learned from this journey and if it made you question the boundaries between the world of the living and the dead. If you also have chilling stories to tell, don't hesitate to share them with us. Who knows, your experience might become our next script? Together, we can explore the darkest mysteries and uncover the secrets hidden in the shadows. Thank you for being a part of this experience.